The morning sun filtered through the reinforced windows of Titan Military Academy, casting long shadows across Lecture Hall 7. 250 cadets sat in perfect formation, their uniforms crisp and their attention supposedly focused on Professor Valdez's drone about interstellar combat protocols. Kira Chen slouched in seat 43A, her dark eyes fixed on a holographic display showing various alien battle formations. She'd memorized this material 3 years ago when she was 14, but nobody here needed to know that. Better to let them think she was just another average cadet struggling through her second year. The Zephyrian fleet typically employs a diamond formation, Professor Valdez continued, his voice carrying the monotone quality of someone who'd given this lecture 1,000 times before. Their weakness lies in the rear flanks, where their shield generators create overlap zones. Kira stifled a yawn. She could have taught this class blindfolded. The Zephyrians hadn't used diamond formations in combat for over 2 years now, not since the Battle of Proxima Station, where human forces had exploited exactly that weakness. But why correct the professor? That would draw attention, and attention was the last thing she wanted. A sharp knock echoed through the hall, causing 250 heads to turn toward the massive doors. Professor Valdez paused mid-sentence, his weathered face creasing into a frown. Interruptions during tactical briefings were strictly forbidden. "Enter," he called out, though his tone suggested whoever was knocking had better have a damn good reason. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Admiral Sarah Martinez herself. Kira's stomach dropped. The Admiral never visited classes unless something monumentally important was happening. Behind her walked Colonel James Park and a trio of officers Kira didn't recognize, their dress uniforms gleaming with decorations that spoke of real combat experience. The entire hall fell silent, not the polite quiet of a well-behaved class, but the absolute stillness that comes when everyone instinctively knows something significant is about to happen. "Professor Valdez," Admiral Martinez said, her voice carrying easily across the vast space. "I apologize for the interruption, but I have urgent business to attend to." Professor Valdez snapped to attention, so fast Kira was surprised he didn't give himself whiplash. "Of course, Admiral. How can I assist you?" Admiral Martinez stepped further into the room, her keen eyes scanning the rows of cadets. "I'm looking for the occupant of seat 43A. Every head in the hall turned toward Kira. She felt her cheeks burn as hundreds of curious stares fixed on her position. This was exactly what she spent 2 years trying to avoid. Whatever was happening, she wanted no part of it. "Ma'am," Kira said, rising slowly to her feet. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "That would be me. Cadet Kira Chen." Admiral Martinez studied her for a long moment, and Kira felt like she was being examined under a microscope. The Admiral's expression was unreadable, but something flickered in her eyes that might have been surprise. "Cadet Chen," the Admiral said finally, "or should I say Go 7? The silence in the hall became deafening. Kira felt the blood drain from her face. Nobody was supposed to know that call sign. Nobody was supposed to connect her to those missions. That was the whole point of staying anonymous. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Kira said carefully. "I think you had me confused with someone else." Admiral Martinez smiled, but there was no warmth in it. 3 months ago, during the siege of Europa Station, an unknown fighter pilot single-handedly held off an entire Zephyrian squadron while evacuation transports completed their runs. The pilot's call sign was Go 7. No records exist of this pilot's identity, but sensor data from the battle shows the fighter launched from the Academy training facility here on Titan. Kira's throat felt dry. She could hear whispers starting around the hall as her fellow cadets began putting pieces together. This was a disaster. 2 months ago, the Admiral continued, Ghost 7 appeared again during the raid on the Kepler Supply Depot. 17 Zephyrian heavy fighters destroyed, 0 friendly casualties. Once again, the pilot vanished without filing a proper after-action report. "Ma'am, I really don't know what you're talking about," Kira said, but even she could hear how weak the denial sounded. "Last month," Admiral Martinez pressed on, "Ghost 7 showed up during the defense of New Singapore. The battle was going badly for our forces until this mysterious pilot appeared and somehow managed to disable the Zephyrian flagship's main weapons array. The enemy fleet retreated within hours. Colonel Park stepped forward, holding a sleek black case. "The thing is, Cadet Chen, we finally managed to track Ghost 7's ship back to its docking bay. Bay 47, in the Academy's auxiliary hangar. A bay that's been registered to one Kira Chen for the past 8 months." Kira closed her eyes. 8 months ago, she'd started her unauthorized missions, using her grandmother's old fighter that she'd been restoring as a hobby. She'd been so careful to avoid detection, to stay off the official channels. Apparently not careful enough. "The High Command has authorized me to present this," Admiral Martinez said as Colonel Park opened the case. Inside, nestled in dark velvet, was a distinguished combat medal, the highest honor that could be awarded to a military pilot. This medal is awarded to Ghost 7, pilot unknown, for extraordinary heroism and exceptional skill in combat against overwhelming odds. The hall erupted in murmurs and gasps. Kira stood frozen, staring at the medal. Part of her felt a surge of pride, but mostly she felt trapped. This was supposed to be her secret, her way of fighting the war without getting tangled up in military bureaucracy and politics. However, Admiral Martinez continued, raising her voice to quiet the crowd. "There's a problem. Ghost 7 isn't operating without official authorization. Technically, these actions constitute desertion, theft of military property, and unauthorized engagement with enemy forces." The pride evaporated, replaced by cold fear. Kira had known the risks when she started her nighttime missions, but she'd hoped the results would speak for themselves. Apparently not. "The penalty for these charges could be court-martial and imprisonment," the Admiral said. "Or, given the exceptional results achieved, Ghost 7 could accept a field commission and join the elite Phantom Squadron." Kira's head snapped up. Phantom Squadron was legendary. Only the most skilled pilots ever got invited to join their ranks. It was also a unit with a casualty rate that approached 90%. "So, Cadet Chen," Admiral Martinez said, "what's it going to be? Court-martial or commission?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Around the hall, Kira could feel the weight of expectation from her fellow cadets. Some looked impressed, others jealous, and a few seemed almost angry that she'd been keeping such a massive secret. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" Kira asked. "Granted." Kira took a deep breath. "I never asked for recognition. I certainly never asked to be dragged in front of my entire class and forced to choose between prison and a suicide mission." Kira took a deep breath. "I never asked for recognition. I certainly never asked to be dragged in front of my entire class and forced to choose between prison and a suicide mission." A few cadets gasped at her bluntness, but Admiral Martinez just raised an eyebrow. "Is that a no, Cadet?" "That's a question." Kira shot back, her temper finally getting the better of her caution. "Why now? Why here? You could have handled this privately, but instead you chose to make a spectacle of it. So I'm wondering what game you're really playing, Admiral." The silence that followed was so complete that Kira could hear her own heartbeat. She just questioned a flag officer in front of hundreds of witnesses. Her military career was probably over before it had really begun. But instead of anger, Admiral Martinez looked almost pleased. "Very good. Cadet, you're thinking tactically. The answer is simple. We need Ghost 7, but more than that, we need Ghost 7 to be seen. The war isn't going well. Morale is low, and our people need heroes to believe in. So I'm supposed to be your poster child?" Kira asked. "You're supposed to be yourself," the Admiral replied. "The pilot who faced impossible odds and won. The question is whether you'll do it officially or keep sneaking around like a vigilante." Kira looked around the hall, at the faces of her fellow cadets. Some she'd known for 2 years. Others were strangers despite sharing classes. All of them were watching her, waiting to see what she'd choose. In a few months, most of them would graduate and head off to their first assignments. How many would come back? "If I accept the commission," Kira said slowly, "I want guarantees. No propaganda tours, no publicity appearances, no using my name to sell war bonds." "Agreed," Admiral Martinez said without hesitation. "I want to keep my own ship. Grandmother's fighter has modifications that aren't available on standard military craft. That can be arranged, assuming it passes inspection." Kira hesitated, then decided to push her luck. "And I want to choose my own missions." No suicide runs just because Command thinks it would look good in the history books. This time, Admiral Martinez paused. That's a bigger ask, Cadet. Phantom Squadron operates under direct orders from High Command. Then maybe I should take my chances with the court-martial, Kira said with a shrug that she hoped looked more casual than she felt. Colonel Park leaned over to whisper something in the Admiral's ear. She nodded slowly, then looked back at Kira. Very well. You'll have input on mission selection, though final authority remains with your commanding officer. Deal, Kira said before she could change her mind. Admiral Martinez smiled, and this time it seemed genuine. Then step forward, go 7, and accept your medal. Kira walked down the steps toward the front hall, acutely aware of every eye following her movement. When she reached the Admiral, she came to attention and saluted. By the authority vested in me by the Terran Defense Council, Admiral Martinez said formally, I hereby award the Distinguished Combat Medal to Lieutenant Kira Chen, call sign Go 7, for exceptional valor in combat operations. The Admiral pinned the medal to Kira's uniform, the weight of it somehow both heavier and lighter than she'd expected. Around the hall, her fellow cadets began to applaud, the sound building until it filled the entire space. Congratulations, Lieutenant, Admiral Martinez said quietly. Your transport to Phantom Squadron headquarters leaves in 2 hours. I suggest you pack quickly. As the Admiral and her entourage filed out of the hall, Kira stood frozen at the front of the room, the medal gleaming on her chest. 2 hours ago, she'd been an anonymous cadet trying to avoid attention. Now she was a commissioned officer headed for the most dangerous assignment in the entire fleet. Well, she muttered to herself, this should be interesting. The transport ship Valiant cut through hyperspace like a knife through silk, its hull humming with barely contained energy. Kira sat in the passenger compartment, still wearing her academy uniform with its new addition. The Distinguished Combat Medal felt heavier with each passing hour, a constant reminder that her quiet life was officially over. Across from her sat Captain Rex Morris, her new commanding officer and leader of Phantom Squadron. He was younger than she'd expected, probably mid-30s, with close-cropped brown hair and scars that spoke of real combat experience. He'd been reviewing her file for the past 3 hours, occasionally glancing up expressions that ranged from skeptical to impressed. 17 confirmed kills and 3 unauthorized missions, Captain Morris said finally, closing the digital tablet with a soft click. Either you're the luckiest pilot in the fleet, or you're actually as good as Admiral Martinez thinks you are. Luck had nothing to do with it, Kira replied, meeting his gaze steadily. I studied those engagements for months before I ever launched. I knew the enemy patterns, their weaknesses, their probable responses to different tactics. And you did all this research on your own time using Academy resources? My grandmother left me her personal military archive when she died. Kira explained. Combat footage, tactical analyses, classified briefings from the war with the hegemony 20 years ago. I've been studying warfare since I was 12. Captain Morris leaned back in his seat, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Your grandmother was Commander Lisa Chun, wasn't she? The one who held off 3 hegemony cruisers at the Battle of Titan. You knew her? Kira asked, surprised. Knew of her. Every pilot in the fleet studies that engagement. She bought the evacuation fleet 47 minutes with nothing but guts and a modified interceptor. Took out 2 cruisers before they finally got her. Kira's throat tightened. She'd watched the combat footage of that battle hundreds of times, seeing her grandmother's fighter dancing between massive enemy ships like a gnat challenging elephants. It always ended the same way. She taught me that sometimes one pilot can make all the difference, Kira said quietly. That's why I couldn't just sit in classrooms while people were dying out here. And that's exactly the attitude that's going to get you killed, Captain Morris said bluntly. Phantom Squadron isn't about heroic last stands, Lieutenant. We're about surgical strikes, intelligence gathering, and coming home alive. The moment you start thinking like a hero instead of professional soldier, you become a liability to your team. Kira bristled at the criticism. My results speak for themselves, Captain. Your results are impressive, he agreed. They're also completely unsustainable. You've been fighting inferior pilots and outdated ships with surprise on your side. Phantom Squadron goes after targets that conventional forces can't handle. The pilots you'll face have just as much training as you do, better ships, and they'll be expecting you. Before Kira could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Attention passengers! We'll be dropping out of hyperspace in 5 minutes. Please secure any loose items and prepare for normal space transition. Captain Morris stood up and stretched, his joints popping audibly. Get some rest while you can, Lieutenant. Tomorrow you meet the rest of the squadron, and we'll see if you can actually work as part of a team. The transition back to normal space was smooth, barely more than a gentle lurch as the Valiant's hyperdrive spun down. Through the small porthole beside her seat, Kira caught her first glimpse of Phantom Base. It wasn't what she'd expected. Instead of a massive space station or fortified asteroid, the base was built into a seemingly ordinary cargo hauler. The ship looked old and beaten up, the kind of vessel that would blend in perfectly with normal commercial traffic. Only the subtle sensor rays and carefully concealed weapon placements gave away its true nature. Impressed, Captain Morris asked, noticing her examination of the ship. It's clever, Kira admitted. Mobile command-based disguise as civilian shipping. You could operate behind enemy lines for months without detection. Exactly. We've been using this setup for 18 months now. The Zephyrians still think we're operating out of a fixed installation somewhere in the outer rim. The docking procedure took another 20 minutes, during which Kira tried to calm her nerves. She'd been confident during her solo missions, but joining an established unit was different. These pilots had been working together, trusting each other with their lives. She was the outsider, the unknown quantity who might get them all killed. Lieutenant Chen? A new voice called out as soon as the airlock cycled open. The speaker was a woman about Kira's age, with short red hair and the kind of confident swagger that came from surviving more battles than she cared to count. I'm Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, call sign Raptor. Welcome to the Ghost Ship. Ghost Ship? Kira asked as they walked through corridors that looked deliberately shabby and run down. Phantom Base, Maya explained with a grin. We call it the Ghost Ship because officially it doesn't exist. Neither do we, for that matter. As far as Fleet Command is concerned, Phantom Squadron is just a rumor. They pass through a series of security checkpoints, each one more sophisticated than the last despite their deliberately mundane appearance. Finally, they reached the squadron ready room, where Kira got her first look at her new teammates. 8 pilots lounged around the room, their ages ranging from early 20s to late 40s. All of them had the lean, alert look of predators, and all of them were studying her with undisguised curiosity. Everyone meet Ghost 7, Captain Morris announced. Also known as Lieutenant Kira Chen, our newest squadron member. A tall man with graying temples stood up from the poker game in the corner. So you're the mystery pilot who's been making us all look bad, he said with a slight accent that sounded vaguely European. I'm Commander Eric Volkov, call sign Bear. I handle electronic warfare and intelligence gathering. Don't let him fool you, said another pilot, this one barely old enough to shave. Bear's got more confirmed kills than the rest of us combined. He just prefers to jam their systems and let them crash into asteroids instead of shooting them directly. More efficient, Bear said with a shrug. Why waste ammunition when gravity works for free? The introductions continued around the room. Lieutenant Jake Stone, call sign Hammer, specialized in heavy assault missions. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, call sign Whisper, was their stealth infiltration expert. Each pilot had their own specialty, their own role in the squadron's complex operations. And I'm Lieutenant Tom Brooks, said the young pilot who'd spoken before. Call sign Kid, for obvious reasons. I know I don't look like much, but I can thread a fighter through a debris field at Mach 3 while blindfolded. Kid's not bragging, Maya added. He's actually done it. We had a bet. Despite herself, Kira found herself relaxing slightly. The banter and easy camaraderie reminded her of her academy friends, before everything had gotten complicated with medals and commissions. All right, settle down, Captain Morris called out. We've got a mission briefing in 10 minutes. Chun, you'll be observing this one to see how we operate. No pressure, no expectations, just watch and learn. The briefing room was adjacent to the ready room, its walls covered with tactical displays and enemy ship silhouettes. As the lights dimmed and the holographic projector activated, Kira saw their target for the first time. It was a Zephyrian research facility built into a captured human space station in a contested zone between Earth and Zephyrian space. The facility was heavily defended, surrounded by patrol ships and automated defense platforms. Intelligence indicates they're developing new weapons technology. Captain Morris explained as a hologram rotated slowly. Specifically, improved shield generators that could make their capital ships nearly invulnerable to our current weapons. So we blow it up? Hammer asked hopefully. Negative. We need the research data intact. This is a snatch and grab operation. Get in, download everything from their central computer, and get out before they can mount a serious response. Bear leaned forward, studying the defensive positions. 15 patrol ships, 8 defense platforms, and at least 2 squadrons of fighters on standby. That's a lot of firepower for a research station. Which tells us the research must be important, Captain Morris replied. Important enough to risk a squadron for. As the briefing continued, Kira found herself analyzing the mission from every angle. The approach vector they were planning would work, but it left them vulnerable to counterattack during the extraction phase. The timing was tight, maybe too tight if they encountered unexpected resistance. Question, she said finally, surprising herself. Captain Morris paused. Go ahead. The patrol pattern around the station. It's designed to prevent direct assault, but what about a two-phase operation? Hit their outer perimeter from one vector to draw their attention, then infiltrate from the opposite side while they're responding to the diversion? The room fell silent as the other pilots considered her suggestion. Bear pulled up additional tactical displays, running calculations on his tablet. It could work, he said slowly. If we time it right, we could pull most of their mobile forces out of position. But someone would have to fly the diversion mission, and that's essentially a suicide run. Not if they know what they're doing, Kira said quietly. Captain Morris studied her for a long moment. You're volunteering for the suicide mission on your first day? I'm volunteering for the mission that plays to my strengths, Kira corrected. Solo operations hit and run tactics, keeping multiple enemies busy while staying alive. It's what I've been doing for months. Except this time you won't be fighting Training Academy rejects, Maya pointed out. These are frontline Zephyrian pilots with combat experience. Good, Kira said with a smile that was all teeth. I was getting bored with easy targets. The planning session continued for another 2 hours, refining tactics and contingencies until everyone knew their role perfectly. As the meeting broke up, Captain Morris pulled Kira aside. You sure about this? He asked quietly. I wasn't kidding about the suicide mission part. Even if everything goes perfectly, you'll be outnumbered 12-1. Captain, Kira said, my grandmother once told me that the most dangerous moment in any battle is when you start believing your own propaganda. The Zephyrians think they're unbeatable because they outnumber us. That overconfidence is going to get them killed. And if you're wrong, Kira shrugged, then I'll die doing something that matters instead of sitting in a classroom learning about battles that happened 5 years ago. Captain Morris nodded slowly. Fair enough. Mission launches in 18 hours. Get some sleep, Lieutenant. You're going to need it. As Kira made her way to her assigned quarters, she couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would change everything. Not just for her, but for the entire war. The Zephyrians had gotten used to facing predictable human tactics, conventional strategies that played to their strengths. Tomorrow, they were going to learn why humanity was called the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And Kira Chen was going to be the one teaching them.